Hey, so my topic was using humor in the classroom by me, Connor Gilden. Just the introduction. Again, my issue is the role of humor in building relationships, supporting classroom climate, and responding to student behavior. Using humor can build a stronger relationship between the students and the teachers, but if it is used in the wrong way or the wrong situation, it can be potentially damaging to the student or the classroom environment as a whole. There's a big bullet point right here that there is a big, big, big difference between using humor intentionally versus inappropriately. And all that means is just humor should be planned. It should not be off the cusp, off the rip, just random or constant. It should be intentionally used. And I'll get into that a little bit later in some other slides. Some of the biggest takeaways from the research is this one, which I found, I believe, in my first resource, which was about using humor in the PE and health classroom, which is why it was just a big article for me. I really enjoyed it. The laugh into engagement effect. It's just something when like a story or a joke or a skit captures the student's attention at the beginning of the lesson. Once students are laughing and interested, they are much, much, much more likely to stay focused and engaged during this activity. I'll speak a little bit on that later, but yeah, all that means is just students, when they remember something that is funny or something that grabbed their attention, they're much more likely to be able to go back and connect or just remember that specific lesson or that part of the lesson. Um, Rather than using sarcasm or making fun of students, teachers should use positive and appropriate humor. Because making fun of a student and using sarcasm could make a student feel unwelcome or put down, which could lead to them feeling disconnected. They could display negative behaviors and even damage the relationship between you and that student. A classroom where humor is intentionally incorporated, like planned, they may experience fewer situations of inappropriate joking or disruptive behavior. But humor does work best when the students still understand your expectations and your boundaries. Meaning, just because that you might be the joking around teacher or a little bit lighter hearted of a classroom, your students still should know your expectations and classroom rules. That is a must. Some of the positives that teachers who use humor in the classroom intentionally create a much more relaxed environment, which can build stronger relationships with the students and engage the students in the learning process. It just, again, students are much more likely to want to learn and want to be a part of the classroom when they feel more accepted and it's not as they're not nervous, and just eases that classroom anxiety. When it's used as an instructional strategy, it eases teacher stress as well, and it engages the students, which leads to a more comfortable and welcoming classroom environment. Again, the positives are not just for students, it's also for teachers. Students feel connected, relaxed, and calm when humor is implemented in the classroom. And again, when it's planned and implemented, not just randomly. Some of the negatives is that humor can unintentionally cross boundaries or offend students. Like I said, it should be planned. It shouldn't just be off the cusp and random. Jokes about appearance, culture, gender, ability, or personal circumstances are never, ever okay. And, if this happens, it can make a student feel singled out or disrespected, even if the teacher didn't mean harm. Once that trust is damaged, it definitely can affect the classroom climate and the participation of students. Students might focus more on being funny rather than learning. And to go back to the big bullet point, once that trust is damaged, a student might is going to be less likely to want to raise their hand, participate, answer questions, or just take risks in the classroom. Humor can it can also lead to misinterpretation or confusion. Like I said, sarcasm is the example for that. Just because you didn't mean it doesn't mean it can't be taken a different way. Again, unequal participation. If humor becomes the part of the classroom culture and that's what students get used to in your class, the more outgoing and social students may dominate your classroom still, because the quieter students might feel more pressured or left out if they don't feel or think that they're funny, or they're not really confident enough to participate. And then again, just going back, humor can undermine teaching authority. Again, you should always still be enforcing your classroom rules and expectations so that humor doesn't undermine, and that the kids don't assume that, oh, it's the lighthearted class, this is the joking teacher, he won't care. No, no. There are still rules and expectations to follow, even if you are using humor in your classroom. The importance for students is that humor can easily reduce the stress and anxiety, and it makes it a lot easier to engage with the material and the teacher. If a class starts to feel tense or overly serious, students might be less willing to participate or take academic risks, like I said on that last slide. Comedy or humor can make the classroom feel much more approachable, which supports motivation and learning. And then lastly, humor can increase in attention and memory. And that goes back to the laugh into engagement effect that I had, I believe, on the second or third slide. Students are much more likely to remember content that is connected to something engaging or unexpected, like a funny skit or a joke or just something that you plan to put in. But again, you must plan to put it in, not just off the cusp. Why is it important for teachers is because humor helps build relationships and trust with your students. I love using humor in the classroom. Of course, I know when, how, and why to use it. And I know certain students that enjoy it and certain students that don't. And, a lot of students that have that are okay with the joking and the humor, I feel really, really tight and a great relationship with them. When the students see their teacher as approachable and human, they are more likely to feel comfortable asking questions, making mistakes, and staying engaged. Humor can also can be used to help the teacher reset the mood when students are distracted or disengaged without immediately turning to consequence. And that's one of the big reasons why I like using humor, is that I can try to jokingly get students back on task without having to immediately turn to consequences or discipline. It can improve the overall classroom climate, and shared positive moments can help actually build a sense of community, which leads to better cooperation and fewer behavior issues. And my example for this one is a lot of times I'll use self deprecating humor, whether it's something I mess up or it's something that maybe I did differently when I was a kid from them. I'll point it out. We'll all have a good laugh at Mr. Guild and Mr. G. And a lot of times that really does help the classroom come together. And some of them might even reference that same story in later lessons. So, again, just one of my favorites to go to. When you should be implementing humor. So it should be intentional. Like I've been saying the whole time, it should not be random and it should not be constant. Because again, when it's constant, it might lead to people and students thinking that it's okay to just joke around and get off task, which we all know isn't. So some of the research articles that I was reading and the peer-reviewed articles on classroom climate suggest that humor is most effective when it's tied to learning goals, such as using funny examples or storytelling that can reinforce content rather than distract you from it. And I apologize if you can hear the fireworks going on just outside my window. Using inclusive and respectful humor, again, you want to avoid sarcasm and stereotypes or jokes that could target students because, again, you don't want them feeling left out or discouraged. Instead, teachers can use that self-deprecating humor or content-based humor that does not single anybody out. Again, self-deprecating, one of my favorite ones to use in the classroom because it's almost like the class not unites against me, but none of the students are the ones being made fun of, so they all feel a lot more comfortable. And then using humor as a tool for engagement, and you can even use it for transitions. For example, a quick joke or a light comment can really help students refocus between activities or reduce the tension before a difficult task like a quiz or a project or anything like that. Another thing that I noticed in the research articles and the peer review articles or journals is that research on classroom management has shown that positive emotional cues can improve attention and cooperation. So, my reflection and final thoughts on this topic and issue is that humor is so much more than just making class fun. It can directly impact learning engagement, and classroom relationships. The effectiveness of humor does depend on how, when, and why it is used, not just whether it is used or not. Again, that's something that I've said throughout the slideshow, but it does play a very big role in student motivation, their stress levels, and the classroom climate. Again, you need to know how, when, and why, not just whether you're using humor or not. And this next bullet point really hammers that home is that humor is a teaching tool, not a personality. Again, if you go a little too far and it's just you kind of make it your personality, you'll get the students that think it's okay to joke around and get off task and display some negative behaviors when humor should be a teaching tool, not a personality. When it's used intentionally and respectfully, it can strengthen both instruction and your relationships. You can get the maximum out of your teaching/learning, and it can make the relationships between you and your students a lot better. The most effective use requires awareness, balance, and professionalism. Again, that's knowing when to joke, how to joke, and why you're joking, not just out of the blue. Yeah, and then here are my sources.